Ryan and Kayla, thank you so much for joining us today for part of the journey. I
Thank
heard you
for
guys were
having
on
us.
vacation recently, so you're a little jet lagged.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Where were you guys on vacation?
We went to Japan. We were there for a couple weeks, and we had a really lovely time. We really appreciate the culture. We've been there. We went there on our honeymoon, so we really wanted to go back. So yeah, it was a
Awesome.
great time.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
our pleasure.
So, your faith journey, where were you guys both individually at that time that you guys met?
You can go first.
Okay.
Because I'm the opposite.
So where I was at in my faith, I felt like pretty strong, I would say. I wouldn't say like necessarily at my peak. I feel like my faith peaked a lot, especially in high school. I went to a Christian high school. I went to Heritage Christian, and I really appreciated my time there. I really felt like it really deepened and strengthened my faith. It really made my faith like personal to me, not just like what my parents like believed in, you know. So where I was at, I was pretty strong in my faith. Like I was still going to church most every week. I was part of a Bible study at the time. I was active in prayer, things like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
180. Complete opposite. At least like my upbringing, or at least when I first met Kayla, it was very personal. I never went to church really growing up. It was only like a Christmas kind of thing. So at least like my faith was always very much like no one around me, just myself. And I wouldn't say I was the greatest, person in a sense, to where it was like I only really reached out in time of need, and that's not what you should do. I forget what it is, but there was a video out there that I watched where it was like, someone's not gonna want you around if the only time you ever talk to them is when everything's burning. And so it's like that's not the greatest relationship you want to have with God. So at least that's where my faith was, where it was like, unfortunately, it was only really when I needed it, and it was again super personal, where it was like I didn't have anyone around me to kind of bounce off, or at least like use as an example. Like that's one thing I was really envious of Kayla when we first met, was her upbringing around it made it super easy. And that's one downside with where I'm at now, which is like it's partially embarrassing being like 25 and being still as emotionally into it as I am, but yet also as childlike in experience, or like still everything's very new to me.
So, what did conversation look like between you two as the relationship started to get more serious when it came to faith?
Well, I think a lot of it actually kind of stemmed from when I met Kayla's like family. I feel like a lot of, because at least growing up, there was a part of me that like wanted to be a part of it. It's like, even though I only went to church really at Christmas, that one time a year, I was still like, this is awesome. I love this place, and especially when you're a kid, your emotions are just like very heightened. You really like this, right? And like, so when we go to church and everyone's singing the songs, you're like, man, this is really like, you get a false sense of like even like what realistically it should be, or what realistically it is, because as a kid you're just like, I just love everything. And so when I met Kayla's family, it was really cool seeing kind of what I've yearned for, or something I wanted, where it's like her whole family would pray before meals, and they went every Sunday, and it was just like, part of it was just like I envied that. So I feel like at least when we started getting into like deeper conversations, it was very easy for me to be like, at least agreeable in a sense, to be like, you can take the ropes, because I just want that for myself.
I feel like a big struggle that you had, like especially when we first met, is like your fear of like death and dying. Like I feel like that was really, really crippling for you, and it was really hard for me to see. So being able to talk with you about that and like share the hope that I have and the reason why I'm not afraid of those things is like it was really cool to be able to talk to you about those things. And I'm just like happy to see that. Sorry. I'm happy to see that. I feel like you're not that same man before. So, like, crippled by those fears, I really feel like that's like one of the biggest changes I've seen in you. And it's just, I love that.
Can you talk a little bit about those fears that you had for Ryan throughout, you know, your dating life?
Yeah. I mean, I was at a certain point, like we were friends for a while, and at a certain point I realized that I was in love with Ryan, and I was really afraid of being unequally yoked. That's like when a person of faith is in a romantic relationship with someone who's not. And I grew up with two parents that loved each other and put Christ first, and that was really important to me. And I realized that I was in love with this person that I was afraid wasn't going to have that kind of relationship with God like my parents had with God. And I was really, really struggling with that, because I know that, like, statistically, if a person of faith is with or marries someone that's not of faith, they will fall away. That's usually what happens. That's what the statistics show. And I was really struggling with that. And eventually, like, I always prayed for Ryan, and I was, like, just so convinced that God was after his heart. And eventually, my prayer was, like, the same all the time. Like, every night, I would just cry in my car on my way home and just pray that God would touch Ryan's heart, and if this relationship wasn't what he wanted for my life, then I was okay with that. I wanted it to all fall away, but I just was really prayerfully hoping that God would save Ryan, even if I wasn't there to see it. At least I would be a part of that. And I'm just so thankful that I got to see it.
Ryan, what does it feel like to hear her talk about you like that?
It's kind of, it's hard, because I also feel, I mean, it's really, like, pulls on the heartstrings, of course. I mean, I know there's been multiple conversations me and her have had where it's just like, again, talking about my skepticism, talking about my fears, you know. I mean, there was a big portion of when we first met where, like, I just, like, growing up for a large part of, like, my teenage years, I was like, I just didn't want to go to bed. I just didn't want to sleep, because I was like, I'm going to die one day, and this, you know, that was, like, my biggest fear. Death doesn't scare me, it's the eternity. That's what scares me, or at least did. Growing up, it was like, because if I slept for an hour, it's like, I feel like I missed time. Well, that's only an hour. Now take that days, weeks, months. Oh, my dogs, my family, you know, that's, once I'm gone, you know, what's next? Like, all that's for nothing. Like, it was just a really big fear of mine. It's just like, if you don't have, if there's nothing else after, it's like, what makes good and bad? There's so many things that dictate that. It's just like, if there's nothing, then why does anything matter? What's the point?
When was the turning point for you? When did you start to really gain a curiosity about God and faith and taking it seriously?
Seeing Kayla and seeing Kayla's family dynamic and seeing, you know, her support system, it kind of gave me something to use as a base to learn from, you know. Like, growing up, never even had a Bible. Just never had it sounds, it sounds like an excuse, but it's like, if someone doesn't, like, hand you a Bible, you almost never pick it up, because that, like, jump into it is, like, as small as a jump as it seems, it feels like you're jumping off a cliff. And, like, meeting Kayla and, like, meeting her family, it gave me, like, the ground to walk on, to be like, oh, so it's not that scary to take that jump.
So in your childhood, you had talked about that you yearned for that sense of belonging. Do you feel like you belong here?
100%. Yeah. No, I mean, between Pastor Ben's guidance, between everyone's, welcoming, smiles and handshakes in the morning, it's just, again, it's also like Kayla was saying, it puts you in a group of people that are like-minded, very too kind to a fault kind of thing. It's very different than the people I grew up with. So it just feels right, if that makes sense.
Going back to your fear of death, what does that look like today now that you know who Jesus is?
It's actually pretty easy now. And that doesn't come with like, we're not perfect beings. Your mind will, in the dead of night wander. But now it's at least when I do deal with any type of fear, I'll just kind of like whisper to myself and just say like, God, bring me peace, please. To be honest, he listens every time.
Kayla, what changes have you seen in Ryan, and who is he today?
I'm really proud of who Ryan has become. He's a very different person than who I met all those years ago. I really honestly didn't see a future quite like this when we first met, not even close. And it's just so beautiful now. But yeah, I've seen him walk through his faith, and sometimes he really like surprises me in how like he speaks of himself as just like a baby Christian, but like there's like these really profound moments where he has like really amazing clarity and reflection about certain truths of God. And I wish I had like a specific example, but there's sometimes like when he talks even now, I'm like, wow, that is so profound. Like God is speaking through you for sure. Honestly, I really feel like he's a totally different person. Like sometimes I wish I could go back in like a ghost form and meet him again because just to compare, because it's so different. Yeah. It's like in every single way.
I credit Kayla for like pretty much all of it because she again opened my eyes to everything.
I feel like I redirect this a lot, but you put a lot of credit on me. But
yeah. Kayla's like, it's God working through me, so don't tell it was me. But I know.
What message would you have for someone that is in that same spot you were before and is seeking God but doesn't know what the next step is?
I wish I could just like copy paste a bunch of Kaylas and just drop her around the world. That would be an easy one. That'd be really easy. She makes it such a very easy transition. Like she's just again so again, wonderful person, and meeting wonderful people makes everything, easy. But if you don't have, like, if it's not gonna be a person, that's kind of what I'm getting at. If it's not a person that's gonna, give you that little bit of a nudge, or like meeting that right person at the right time, the best guidance I could really give someone would be just show up to a Sunday. And it sounds scary again. If you don't go to a church and you just show up to a church on a Sunday, you're just like, you feel really out of place because you've never been there. And it's, again, very scary. I've been there so many times. So I would really just say my best guidance is just very small. It's very simple. Just show up to a Sunday and just listen.
Well, thank you, both of you, for sharing your story. Ryan, thank you for being so vulnerable. Sharing your entire childhood up until today. We appreciate it so much, and we're praying for you as you continue to grow in your faith.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Part of the Journey. Ryan and Kayla's story reminded me of a Bible passage from 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. It says, "But grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." Any time is the perfect time to continue learning about Jesus. Maybe you can be the one that shares Jesus with someone else and is there to guide them along that path like Kayla was for Ryan. Be sure to use the buttons below to like and comment and hit subscribe so that you'll be notified when our next episode drops.